Hello everybody, Shrouded Hand here. This video is going to be a bit shorter than normal. I found a random news clipping about this story a while ago, and since then I've wanted to cover it, but I haven't been able to find much extra information on it, so it just kind of sat on the back burner. It's one of those strange stories that not many people know about, so today it's coming off the burner and I'll present all the information I can currently find, what little there is of it. It's a simple case of a man taking his own life, but something about it just gives me the creeps and I can't quite put my finger on why. Maybe it's because I'm a bit claustrophobic, or maybe it's just because the details are so vague it makes you really ponder the final moments of this man's life. On December the 15th, 1973, Lucy May returned to her New Orleans home to find that her husband, 73-year-old Alan Robicheaux, had gone missing without a trace. It was highly unusual for Alan to disappear like this. Lucy called the police and a manhunt was instigated. A few weeks later, his car was found abandoned a few blocks away from Lucy and Alan's house, and it seems after this the investigation hit a dead end. The car provided no other clues, and without any other leads, the case went cold. Lucy May, now alone, lived in the house for a few more years before selling it on. Over the following decades, the house had various occupants, and nothing else of note occurred. That is until 1991, almost 20 years after Alan's disappearance. The current house owners discovered a termite infestation in a crawl space under the house. A team of exterminators were called in and they entered the crawl space in order to find the source of the infestation. Towards the back of the crawl space was a concrete wall with a metal plate in the centre. Pulling away the plate, they found a small, dusty chamber, and inside that chamber they found a human skull. This chamber was so confined that the police had to cut a hole in the wall from the outside of the house to get into it, and what they found inside was bizarre to say the least. Inside that tiny space, barely big enough for a person, was a male human skeleton lying on its back with a green duffel bag by its head. The body had either been naked when it died or the clothes had rotted away, as the skeleton was wearing only a pair of woolen socks. A gunshot wound to the skull showed that the man had died from a bullet to the head. A gun was found next to the body, and blood splatter on the chamber walls confirmed that the man had been shot in the same place where the body was found. It was most likely a self-inflicted wound. The most bizarre detail, though, is that the body was surrounded by strange trinkets. Placed around the chamber in an almost ritualistic way, there were many of Alan's personal belongings. There were these strange porcelain statues, a mirror, and toys from his childhood, along with burnt out candles. Of course, the body turned out to be Alan Robicheaux, and the death was ruled to be suicide. Almost 20 years after his disappearance, the mystery was solved, but it also raised a lot of new questions. There's not much information on Alan's life at the time. I can't say whether he had a motive for taking his own life, or what his relationship with his wife was like. At the time of his disappearance, they would have been married for around 30 years and had kids together, so it's strange that this family man would take his own life like that, in a way that meant nobody knew what had happened to him, and he didn't even leave a note for his wife. The tomb that he chose for himself is strange too. Obviously he spent a lot of time preparing the area. A tiny space, barely bigger than a coffin, the opening so small that a human being could only just squeeze through. He must have carefully selected the objects he was going to put in there, the ceramics and toys that had a certain personal significance to him. It's not known whether this was a space that he visited regularly, or whether he furnished it like that on the day of his death. Perhaps this was an area that he came to just to get some peace and quiet, a strange cramped hole under the house. Whatever his reason for being there, this was no small feat. A 73-year-old man crawling through a tiny cellar and into an even narrower space, carrying a bunch of trinkets. This was no spur-of-the-moment action, it was a carefully prepared act. To me, it's just a horrifying way to go. I can just imagine his final moments as he crawls into that tiny room with only enough space to lie flat on his back. The metal plate is slid into place and now he's trapped in there, a flickering candle illuminating the statues and toys placed around himself. Just imagine being in that situation, holding a gun to your head and knowing that this is going to be your final moment on Earth. What emotions he must have felt at that time, I can't even imagine. The abandoned car is a strange detail though. If this was a suicide, then why was his car found so far away from his house? My theory is that Alan abandoned his car, then walked back to his house, trying to throw police off the location of his body. For some reason, rather than letting his family live with the knowledge that he killed himself, he preferred to have them think that he had simply disappeared. Sadly, without closure, it was probably a lot more difficult for his wife to deal with in the long run. As I said at the beginning, this appears to just be a simple case of a man taking his own life. I wanted to bring it to a wider audience because it's so mysterious and sinister. It's one of those stories where the details are interesting enough for you to start building up a picture in your head of what might have happened, but then there's so many unanswered questions that you start to fill in the blanks with all kinds of theories and ideas. What was the significance of this chamber and the items he placed in there? Why does the metal plate look like it was fixed into place from the outside? Was a second person involved? Why was he so afraid of his body being discovered, or his family knowing what happened to him? Why didn't anyone smell a rotting corpse under their feet for 20 years? These are the kind of questions I found myself lying awake one night thinking about, and so I decided to make the video. Now you can lie awake thinking about these things too. Anyway, that's all the information I have. The house has since been demolished and there's an upholstery shop in its place. Any surviving family members have moved on with their lives. Alan Robicheaux, along with his motivations and mysteries, has long been laid to rest. Thanks for watching the video, I hope you found it interesting. I know it wasn't as long as my usual stuff, but I didn't want to pad out the story just to make the video longer. There isn't a lot of information to go on, but it's interesting enough to talk about nonetheless. Shout out as always to the patrons. Thank you to all of you who are supporting my work, it's highly appreciated. And if your name's on screen now, then thank you very much. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Until next time, goodbye.